The Brothers of Liberty, here to remind you what true freedom is. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Brothers of Liberty with the older brother Kelton here. Today we are going to discuss a very touchy subject, extremism and extremists, and see what really is an extremist or extremism. Now I know people are like, Kelton, are you going with the left wing narrative? Well, before you come to that conclusion, let's go ahead and look at the definition and see what I have to say about it, shall we? An extremist, a person who holds extreme or fanatical political or religious views, especially one who resorts to or advocates extreme action. Um, Now, they say the insurrectionists. They say there was insurrectionists on January 6th, and they're being called insurrectionists. They're not being called rioters or protesters. But at the same time, the same media, when Antifa took over 6 city blocks and say it's a government-free zone, which, by the way, according to the Constitution, that's a rebellion and should be put down because you're taking over sovereign territory. Um, they didn't call those extremists. Those are just misunderstood protesters who had enough with the government. Funny how when one side controls everything, they determine who and what extremism is. Um, and that's my next definition right here is extremism, the quality or state of being extreme, or the advocacy of extreme measures or views. The term is primarily used in a political or religious sense, but doesn't mean that's the only time extremism works. They say primarily used in those two senses to refer to an ideology that is considered by the speaker or by some implied shared social consensus to be far outside the mainstream attitudes of society. Which means in the 1930s, if you spoke out against Hitler rounding up the Jews, you were considered an extremist. According to that definition anyway, it said views that are outside the mainstream thinking, which I guess that's why they call Republicans and patriots extremists, because we don't have the same views as the Democrats or communist China. You know, people who believe in the Constitution are called extremists. People who believe in the Second Amendment are called extremists, despite that is the supreme law of the land. And people argue, oh, you're just an extremist who want to have a reason to keep your guns. And so you twist the Constitution because the Second Amendment was made for only the military. If you listen to my video on the Second Amendment, clearly in the language it says the right of the people. Now, the right of the people also appears in two other amendments. So if you're saying that the Second Amendment was only for the military, when it said the right of the people, that means the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment was also only for the military. So I guess they're the only ones that can practice religious freedoms and protest. Um, so before you open your mouth and look stupid, and you better to keep it shut and not to remove all doubt. That's why I say look up language when you actually try to defend your stance, because a lot of times you'll just look like you don't know what you're talking about. Um, Now, the reason why I'm talking about extremism, because here lately you've heard all the things. In June, Biden said to turn in your radical friends and neighbors, trying to get people to snitch on each other and stuff and your family. But remember, he believes that anybody radical probably owns a gun because he doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. Remember, he has F-15s and nuclear bombs that he's willing to use. And if I had a nickel for every time a politician said that, I had two nickels. And it's funny, it came from the same party of the Democrats. They're willing to use nuclear weapons on Americans. Think about that, people. But yet they're the party for the people. They also set up all these rules and lockdowns and stuff and mandates that will hurt businesses and stuff and hurt people. But remember, it's for our own good because they know what's best for the country and no one else does. Um, Now, there was a book called Extremism by J.M. Berger. From what I've seen, he talks about a lot of terrorism extremists, but he sounds like a left wing person because, in the summary of the review of the book, because I Don't have the book, so I didn't read it. But in the summary review, it states that extremism arises from us versus them, perception intensified by the conviction that the success of us is inseparable from hostile acts against them, unless he said it differs from the unpleasantness run of the mill hatred and racism. So I guess he thought it was BLM could and Antifa could do all those riots and stuff, but that won't be called extremism, even though they destroyed their own businesses and everything else and cause prices to shoot up and everything else when they destroy these businesses. But when someone has a pure and legit grievance and or something else, it's extremism. So, like I said, whoever's in charge decides what extremism is. I mean, look at the Taliban. What they do, they don't think is extremism, but we think it is. The Democrats think one thing is not extremism, but the other thing is. They talk about there was insurrectionists on January 6th because they breached the Capitol. How many BLM and Antifa attacked police stations, attacked federal buildings where they had a National Guard protecting the federal building, where they set fire on it? But they're not called insurrectionists or extremists. They're just rioters and protesters. You see, it's either one or the other, and everybody wants to twist their own definition to what they want to believe. Definitions don't change, just the interpretation of it does. Like it said in extremism, whatever the mainstream consider extremism is extremism. So remember, if you were in 1930s and you spoke out against Hitler rounding up the Jews, you were an extremist and you got rounded up as well. And it's funny because there was also a news station, and I think I have the link. I'll share the link if I do have it again. I came across while doing this research. News station states the radicalization of our neighbors extend from everyday people to elected Republicans. Funny how they don't include elected Democrats, despite the fact in 2020 Democrats are saying keep uprising, get in their face. Well, that doesn't mean it's violence. I'm from the ghetto, and anybody from Miami, New York, LA will tell you get in their face means violence, and that does not change. You can try to interpret that any way you want. But yes, Maxine Waters said get in their face. Get in their face is telling them to fight. Um, I'm from the ghetto. I grew up in Carroll City, Miami, Florida. Anybody who knows Carroll City knows that's a rough area. I got called a thug when I told someone I'm from Carroll City, so thank you. Um, National School Board because Association because they didn't like what parents was doing compared parents to domestic terrorism because it's not the narrative that the parents want anymore. Standing up for the Constitution is now being radical and extremist. Different ideas can be extremist. And they want to call us extremists to silence us because you don't want to look like an extremist, so you'll be quiet. So you don't go against the Democrat radical and extremist ideas. This country was founded on freedom, not tyranny or communism. And you can call me extremist all you want. I will still speak my mind. This is the Brothers of Liberty. And in America, we have the right to speak our minds, whether you like it or not. Like I told people before, when some people are like, well, I don't like your aunt, and who cares what you think because you have no teeth. Wow, you attack my appearance. You know, when people insult me, that only feeds me because that means I know I'm triggering them. So I'm gonna make more videos like this. So if you really want me to shut up, pay me no attention. And that won't do no good because as you can ask my family, I never shut up, even if no one pays me attention. And that's just my opinion on it. So how about your opinion? Like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and follow us. If you have any comments, feel free to write them down. If you have a difference of opinion, write it down. And maybe we can have a civil discussion on it instead of attacking each other's personality and appearance. And be what they used to do. Discussion back in the 80s and 90s before all this, um, oh, I'm not going to discuss it because you have a different view than me. You know what? Let's discuss it and be grown-ups about it. But I'm sure that won't happen with a lot of people. And if you have any topics you want us to discuss or anything you just want us to put out on the air here, Brothers of Liberty 76 at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And once again, Carhartt, I am advocating for a boycott like a lot of other patriots and any other boycotts that businesses that may be going against the vaccine the who's saying you need a vaccine to work for them. Let's boycott them too. Because remember, in this world, money talks, and as a teacher said, everybody walks. And that I am the older brother of liberty, reminding you what true freedom is and ought to be. And I'll always remind you of that.